now. I don't even know what the Democratic Party is at this particular moment. They don't have any real leadership. They don't have any, real messaging. They don't seem to have a real sense of direction at this point. So now would be as good a time as any to stand up and, challenge what was.
So let's take a look at this conversation that Charlamagne was having with it's always hard for me to pronounce the number, Cenk and Anna. And I'm interested to get y'all thoughts.
Host of The Breakfast Club and also the author of his latest book, Get Honest or Die Trying. Charlamagne, thank you so much for joining us.
Peace, Cenk, Anna, how we all, man? My favorite news network on the planet.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that. All right. So Charlamagne, look, I appreciated your book, especially because, the thesis, the main point that you're making is that we need to engage in deeper conversations in good faith. But I'm curious if, especially following the results of the presidential election, if you have come to terms with and realize that Democrats aren't really interested in having conversations. They're interested in playing the blame game. They're interested in providing cover for the failures of the Democratic Party. That's my take, but I'm curious if you agree with it.
Big bro in the building. What's up, Doug?
Yeah, I don't like broad generalizations. Even though, we do say the Democratic Party, I think there are a few in there that still want to have honest conversations. I just think that, some of them got to have the balls to stand up and be able to challenge the party. Whatever that may be now. I don't even know what the Democratic Party is at this particular moment. They don't have any real leadership. They don't have any, real messaging. They don't seem to have a real sense of direction at this point. So now would be as good a time as any to stand up and, challenge what was.
My apologies for being a little bit thrown off. And the reason why I say I'm a little bit thrown off is because, is this Charlamagne? Is this Charlamagne, #1 supporter of Kamala Harris, giving her them softball interviews and pretty much acknowledging that he was giving her softball interviews throughout the entire process? So I'm just wondering, what about now is different compared to when you were claiming to be an independent and saying, I'm not saying claiming to be an independent, whatever, but you claim that you say that you're an independent and you always put that out there. So what has happened since the election when you were an independent that was so pro Kamala Harris, but now what makes you have this epiphany to where there's no real leadership within the Democratic Party, no real messaging, where it's like, we don't even know what they're doing? Why would you vote for that party? Because I'm just wondering, like, what has changed in the meantime? And I see this with a lot of people, and I don't say this to discourage people from maybe seeing the light. You never know when you're going to see the light. You never know when your perspective is going to change on something. So that's perfectly fine. I'm not trying to criticize. I'm really asking the question, what changed? I can tell you certain things that happened to get me to change, to go from voting for Barack Obama twice, then deciding to not vote, and then deciding to vote for Donald Trump this time around. I can tell you exactly what significant things happened that made me see things from a different perspective. I can tell you that. So I'm just asking y'all, because there's a lot of people that I believe, and I'm kind of opening up my voting experience to y'all, so that way you'll feel comfortable maybe if you're thinking about going in a different direction. I'm being vulnerable. I'm putting it out there. I have no problem with that, because I want people to feel okay with saying, like, okay, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, I was so Kamala Harris. I was so pro Kamala Harris. I was so pro this person. I hated Donald Trump, all these different things. And now I'm starting to see things from a different perspective. And I think there's a lot of people that are like that, whether they're willing to admit it or not. But I think there's a lot of people that are like that, especially with seeing how a lot of the Democratic pundits, politicians, journalists, whatever they're calling them these days, responded to the election and Donald Trump winning. So my question is sincere. What happened in between these weeks for you to have this epiphany and for you to kind of, I wouldn't call it a come to Jesus moment, but just maybe a eye-opening moment to say that, I don't even want to know if it's eye-opening, but clearly you're seeing things and willing to call out. What's making you so willing to call these things out now? So maybe you always thought them. I'm just wondering, why are you now calling them out? Why are you now taking this stance? And that would be my question that I ask everybody. Shout out to Uncle Brother and Doug in the building. Y'all know what it is. Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
Up to Democratic Party.
Yeah, so that's a great point, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here, which is one, challenge what we thought was the Democratic Party. Two is potentially rebuild that party into something that makes sense and could win elections.
And just to kind of save time, I'm going to skip ahead. All right, I'm going to skip ahead to maybe just a couple minutes because I just want to mainly focus on Charlamagne's perspective. Cenk and Anna, we've talked about them as well. But I want to focus on Charlamagne's perspective.
Times just did a story today about, it turns out that the Democrats lost young males who voted for Bernie Sanders that have now some of them have gone over to MAGA. And that's because of what you just said. It's the economy, stupid. And they said, well, maybe it's sexism, but they keep saying that it's not. What it really is that they're bothered that neither party is actually giving them anything that makes sense economically. And they've got high housing prices, high healthcare prices, high everything prices, and low wages. And that's what's driving them to discontent with the Democratic Party. And that resonated with me. Did that resonate with you?
Absolutely, because when I'm having conversations, the beauty of doing morning radio is that I get to talk to everyday working class people, like every day. And I do a lot of different community initiatives from South Carolina to New Jersey, so I really get to talk to the working class. And I don't get that sense of, hey, we didn't vote for this person because she was a woman. I mean, to be honest with you, I knew more women, it seemed like, who didn't like Kamala Harris than men. Everything was rooted in the economy. I don't care what it was, whether it was, the border, and they were saying that, these illegal immigrants are coming over and getting more resources than people who had been living in these communities forever, whether it was people who couldn't find jobs, whether it was the cost of groceries, every single thing was rooted in the economy. And I say it all the time, man, what people want in this country is people want to have some money in their pocket and they want to feel safe.
Yo, is it me? Am I bugging? And Uncle Brother, you never late, brother, always on time. Is it me or am I bugging? Like this to me is why I can't speak for everybody, but why I look at the Democratic Party as being so fake and phony and just not genuine, not real. Will say and do anything just to appeal to you to get your vote and support. And I don't want to say that Charlamagne is demonstrating this because he's not a Democrat, he's not a politician, but you kind of hear in his response exactly what we're referring to when we say these things. Like Charlamagne is literally going through the entire list of sounding like he's given a speech on why you should support Donald Trump and the things that he was discussing while he was running and campaigning. But I'm just sitting here wondering, like, where was this mindset? Where was this thinking when it came to Charlamagne before? Is it because you just have a personal relationship with Kamala Harris? Is it because we just felt as Black people that we just had to support the quote unquote Black candidate? I'm just really wondering, like, when Barack Obama was coming out accusing people of saying that, or accusing people of just not wanting to vote for Kamala Harris because she's a woman, and calling out a lot of Black men, what did Charlamagne just said? He said he's tapped in with the community, talking to real working class people, and he said that, a matter of fact, it's actually more women that he's spoken to that had an issue with voting for Kamala Harris. So I'm just wondering, like, this is where the disconnect that we always talk about, and we say that the party is completely out of touch. Maybe the party is out of touch because the people that you're working with and sitting down and having interviews with in Charlamagne and getting these softball interviews, they feel how Charlamagne's describing right now. They really feel like that, but they're telling you something totally different. Isn't Charlamagne supposed to be one of Kamala Harris's supporters and her ear to the street? Isn't that why they bring people like Charlamagne and Fat Joe and all these people that were wondering, like, where's the connection between you and politics? Charlamagne, obviously, over the last couple of years, he stepped into that field, but he's supposed to be their connection to the streets, right? You're the one that has the radio show with the common folk calling in. You got a syndicated show. This is where the disconnect comes, because at the end of, and this is why Donald Trump won, because at the end of the day, it's exactly what Charlamagne just described. People want some money in their pocket and want to feel safe. And which candidate do we think was going to put us in the better position? Which candidate was the one that was even willing to speak out on these things, to speak out on making the border safe, to call out the economy? You couldn't have been supporting Kamala Harris and saying, like, I'm all about the economy. People got to be honest. People got to be honest. And if I was Kamala Harris, I'd be pissed off watching this Charlamagne talk, because Charlamagne and Kamala Harris are locked in, and he's bragged about it for a very long time, saying that he has a relationship with her, a relationship with her blood sister. And it's like, you're saying all these things now, bro. Where was you? It's like I go play a game, and you telling me that I'm doing the right thing. I'm drafting the right plays. I'm doing, and then after the game, you're saying like, yeah, I knew they shouldn't have ran those plays. I knew those weren't gonna work. It's like, bro, why you ain't tell me that before? Let's keep going for a little bit.
That's it. Whoever can provide that will always have the ears of the people.
Okay, I actually want you to elaborate on that further, because I think some of the best moments on the Breakfast Club in this election process was when young Black men would call in to explain why it was that they had turned on the Democratic Party. And I find their perspective incredibly important and very interesting. And I feel that they were just kind of left behind by the Democratic Party. And one of the things that would come up over and over again was the immigration issue. And I'm not under the impression at all that these are anti-immigrant individuals, but people living in places like Chicago, for instance, who have seen their resources, which are usually used to nickel and dime the local Black community there, essentially be used for the influx of migrants who came in. Federal government run by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris just kind of neglected the issue and allowed these municipalities to struggle with the issue on their own. And the thing that frustrates me, Charlamagne, is that if you are someone who identifies as on the left, regardless of where you fall on that left-wing spectrum, if you have the audacity to bring up this very real issue, well, I mean, you know how Sonny Hostin will treat you if you bring it up on The View, right? And I think that's an issue. I think it's a problem. The Democrats seem to not ever want to do a little bit of self-reflection to understand, okay, what can we do better the next time around? Instead, I see them kind of lashing out and blaming everyone else for the loss. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. I was a victim of it. I mean, they lost that battle a couple of years ago. I remember a couple of years ago when Governor Greg Abbott and Governor Ron DeSantis were putting, the migrants on buses and planes and sending them to so-called sanctuary cities. And then, as soon as they got there, those so-called sanctuary cities, they weren't so sanctimonious, were they? They were literally saying, hey, no, send them back. You can't come. And I said back then, I thought that was evil genius. Yes, it was inhumane and cruel to do that, but on the flip side, you did say you were sanctuary cities, and you did say you wanted these people until you got them. And so then when they realized it was an issue and they were saying don't come, it made the Republicans look like they had it right the whole time. I remember earlier this year, January, I was doing exactly what you just did, Anna. I was talking to my activist friends in Chicago, like my homie Zoe, and she was going to city council meetings every week, complaining about what was happening. And it wasn't even just about the fact that, the migrants were coming over. She was just complaining that they're getting more resources than we are. I had a guy, he worked.
Yeah. This is my question. How do you have all of these experiences? How do you have all these experiences, but you still decide to vote for Kamala Harris? And I'm not saying that it's a problem for anybody voting for Kamala Harris. Vote for who you want to vote for. I'm just wondering what goes through your mind when you believe the things that you're saying right here, unless you just all of a sudden found this information. I mean, you said that you were having these conversations and you were listening to the Tapped In with Chicago and their city council meetings. Why didn't you push this energy out when you were interviewing Kamala Harris? Why didn't you have this energy just from a day to day when you were visiting different shows and saying all these things about Trump? And maybe this is why Charlamagne feels so offended, in my opinion, when you hear him talk about the fact that y'all were calling Trump fascist, y'all were calling him Hitler. Then when he wins or when he gets, shot, y'all are saying like, oh, we're praying for you. We don't. Because he was bamboozled. He was bamboozled like a lot of people. He was bamboozled like a lot of people that ended up voting for Kamala Harris. Now, let me be clear. When I say that, I'm not insulting anybody's intelligence who voted for Kamala Harris. Not at all. We've all been bamboozled by politicians, I would assume. I know I have. So we all are going to get to a certain point at different points, but we all may get to that point for our individual selves where we start to say like, nah, I'm fed up. I'm fed up. And although I used to make all these arguments for this side, it took a whole lot more work for me to figure out how to express an argument for that side rather than just what clearly makes sense to Charlamagne on this side. So I don't know. We'll listen to maybe a couple more seconds of this, but then we're going to move on. This is just an icebreaker for you.
It's in a parking garage in New York. He saw me one day and he came to me in tears, talking to me about how, there were gangs that were coming over, tearing up his neighborhood. And he was saying he knows this because the border needs to be closed. This is a black woman I'm talking about and a Spanish man. These people were not MAGA in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. They were just talking to people about what was going on in their communities. In New York City, Mayor Adams let a bunch of migrants stay in a school overnight and made the kids that went to the school do homeschooling that day because he needed to give the migrants housing for the night. People were calling into the radio station complaining about that. So when I get on the air and I say that, or if I'm in an interview with, I think at the time I was doing an interview with Fox News, and they asked me a simple question: do I think the border is going to play an issue come November? I told them everything I just told y'all. Next thing I know, MSNBC has a headline that says Charlamagne the God is spreading MAGA messaging. That is not MAGA. That is not MAGA messaging, and that is the Democrats dismissing what their base was actually telling them because they already had labeled the issue of the border a Republican MAGA issue, and it wasn't. It was an American issue, and it was people in their party, people in their base, or used to be in their base, complaining about it, and they didn't listen.
All right, so this is the thing. I really appreciate Charlamagne doing this. I really do. And I'm glad that he's allowing himself to be fed up and reach that point right now. And I'm glad that he's voicing it. Like I said, I think a lot of people are in this position. But let me ask y'all this. You ever been like on a debate team, or you watch a movie like The Great Debaters? And this is why I'm very upset that I didn't get involved in debate. And I always wanted to two things that I always wanted to create, and matter of fact, I will create: debate club and chess club. Debate. You learn how to debate points that you may not necessarily agree with. Now, when you're debating a point that you don't necessarily agree with, in my opinion, I know for me, it may be a lot hard. Well, there's some ways that it may be easier because you understand what the other side is going to say because you actually feel that yourself. I understand that. But when you're actually debating and voicing your opinion and voicing your stance for the argument that you have to make, for me, if I actually believe in it, then that's going to come across. I'm going to sound more confident. I'm going to make more sense. I'm going to sound more intelligent. It's going to be more relatable, all of these different things. I have a question for y'all. Does Charlamagne sound more relatable, more real, more genuine, more intelligent now when he's saying the things that he's saying now and acknowledging all of the shortcomings of the Democratic Party and acknowledging some of the pros that Donald Trump was pushing? Does he sound more intelligent now, or does he sound more intelligent when he's interviewing Kamala Harris and giving her softball questions where he has to dumb himself down, in my opinion? Charlamagne is starting to do that lesson. What did I say that the number one sports lesson that I learned? Do what makes sense. He's starting to approach this from a sensible standpoint, and it's coming across, and I'm happy for the brother because he's sounding, in my opinion, a lot more confident, a lot more intelligent, and it's extremely relatable. And I'm excited to see where this goes for him. So I'm going to leave it there. We're going to move on to our next video, but I definitely wanted to share that with y'all. And y'all let me know if y'all feeling the same way. Y'all let me know if y'all feeling the same way. Am I just reaching? Am I giving him too much credit? I don't know, but that's definitely how I feel. It's Dak. Just want to thank you for checking out our video and visiting the OG Network. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure that you give us a like. And if you're looking to join a community of inspired individuals striving for purposeful abundance, subscribe And if you're feeling real generous, share the video with some friends and family. All right, I'll see y'all soon. Ew.